Hey everybody, we're back with another episode of Black Women Healing Podcast. And today, as usual, we have a special guest, Dr. Judy. But before we introduce Dr. Judy, we're going to share a quote by a Black woman. And then we're just going to do a small reflection. So this quote, actually Myra picked it, which is perfect for today. It says, "Caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare." And this is by Audre Lorde, the
Happy
late
birthday,
great.
Lord. Today's her
It's her
birthday.
birthday?
Yes.
Oh,
See,
nice.
I had no idea. Oh my goodness. See, Myra be knowing y'all.
That's
Uh,
right.
yes. But if you haven't heard of Audre Lorde, like she's most definitely the GOAT, especially of this self-care piece. I believe she coined the term, right, Myra?
I believe so.
Yeah. Let me repeat the quote though, just in case we forgot already, because we're talking. So, caring for myself is not self-indulgence. It is self-preservation, and that is an act of political warfare. So, what are we thinking about this quote? Myra, what are you thinking about this when you hear this?
I just think about how self-care is to keep the care of you going ongoing. And that is not to be viewed as a selfish thing of this person is just doing that thing only for themselves. But I think that self-care is also for the betterment of other people, because if we don't take care of ourselves, then we can't show up for people in the ways that we need to. So that's kind of where my mind goes. What about you?
Um, yeah, I think it's political warfare piece makes me just think like it's a radical act, right? It's like it's which is wild to think like taking care of yourself is like it's such a huge thing, like it's world changing. Um I think looking at this, and I know this quote was a long time ago, I'm looking at this self indulgence piece, and I almost want to like reclaim that too. I actually want to be like, it's okay for it to be self indulgent if that is what we're going to call it, you know? Um, but I know this quote was written a while ago where if this in itself saying this was probably like, you know?
Yeah.
Uh, what about you, Dr. Judy?
So, this quote was spot on for me. And I am with you, Donica. I'm about the reclaiming of the self care piece. And I think when I saw this, I was like, yeah, because anything we put ourselves in, people tend to put a lot of shame around. And there shouldn't be shame in it. You need to reclaim that back. And I talk a lot about martyrdom, right? So this was spot on. You know, we're big, especially women and Black women, at being these martyrs. And so reclaiming that space where you're taking care of yourself and prioritizing your self care is an act of preservation. It is an act of, yeah, no, I need to take care of me. I need to take care of me, and I can't really depend on other people to do it. So that's what I thought of when I saw this right up, you know, right up there.
So you know we're gonna ask, what is martyrdom?
I
Because
was
I see
just
that.
about to say.
What is that? So I feel like we
So
need to.
when you think about martyrs, they're doing stuff often at the expense of themselves for others,
Hmm.
right? You know, everything that they do. So when I hear people say, you know, I'm doing this. I got to take care of myself so that, you know, I can be there for other people. And I'm like, yeah, let's stop the martyrdom. Do stuff for yourself so you can take care of yourself.
Hmm.
And then other people, well, we all know what collateral damage is, right? When you have when somebody's at war and other people get taken out, they say, well, that's just collateral damage. What
Hmm.
I look at this as is when you take care of yourself properly and focus on yourself and stop the martyrdom of, I got to do this because I have to be able to take care of other people, those people and those other things will end up being the collateral beneficiaries of you
Mm,
taking care of yourself because you feel good. You're out there, you're taking care of yourself, you're making sure you're okay for you. Now you feel good. If we're always thinking about other people first, we're not doing, you know, we're not doing it for ourselves. It's like people tell you, you can't lose weight for other people. You got to lose it for yourself. Self care is no different, right? Or else you'll slip right back into not taking care of yourself, taking care of them first because you were always thinking about them first. So,
Ooh.
Mm.
That right there. I have never heard that perspective. That's a great perspective too, because we most definitely do say you got to take care of yourself before you take care of other people. When really it's still kind of that piece of it's not about other people. It is about yourself, and folks will fall into place. It's sustainable like that, right?
Exactly. The sustainability piece
Beautiful.
is very important. And if you constantly think about, and we've all been guilty of it. I know I have been,
Yes.
right? Even when I had medical issues, serious medical issues going on, I'm like, okay, I got to get better because I got to take care of this and this and that with the other people. And I really had to be forced to think of myself. So we've all been there. We've all been
Absolutely. Well, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and officially introduce this amazing guest that you all hear that we have. So we have Dr. Judy Wright, co-author of the book "Self Care Is Not a Mani-Pedi," can attest to this. Having witnessed scores of patients struggle with fatigue, burnout, and exhaustion, as a result, Dr. Judy urges others to take charge of their professional and personal lives through consistent stress management, self care, and accountability. Um, so, today we're going to talk about how self care in short sprints is just as effective as long blocks of self care. So, Dr. Judy, what inspired you to co author Self Care is Not a Mani-Pedi? And this is a little long, and what key message do you hope readers take from it?
So I was asked to contribute to the book, but I will say, it all stemmed from me being on someone else's, uh, for lack of a better word, someone else's podcast, and when I said that term to her, she was like, "Oh my goodness!" Right?
Mhm.
So months down the line, she was writing a book, and she asked me if I would contribute. And I was honored when I saw her name the book that because I was like, yeah. um, I think just the realization. I'll say this. If you can see, I don't even have like a manicure. I used to love going for manicures. I used to love it, right? And that changed where suddenly it just felt like, you know what I could be doing with this hour right now? Like I don't. And what I had to realize is that was no longer self care for me anymore. It was at one point, but it didn't feel like that to me anymore. But for some people, part of it is an outward thing, right? Are you really doing your self care for yourself, or are you doing your self care to show to others
Mm.
that I care about myself? Look, I got this done and I got this done, and are you really doing it for yourself? So that is one of the reasons that I started talking about that. And what was the second part of the question?
Exactly, right, right.
What was
And
that
what key
second part?
messages do you hope readers take from it?
um, I definitely that the key message is do self care on your own terms, not what society claims self care is. A lot of us, when we think self care, we think spa days, which is fine. We think manicures. I think manicures are beautiful. They're art, right? It could be all sorts of stuff, but it could also be taking care of your physicality.
Mm.
It could be making sure you're taking rest breaks, alone time. Like some people are very scared to be alone, right? And they need to explore why they're so scared to be alone. Because some people don't like to be in their own thoughts,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Um, but it could be taking alone time and not feeling ashamed about that, you know? So there's different things that go into it. And self-care is not this one-dimensional thing, right? Again, we tend to think of the physicality of it, but what about the mental space? What about your emotional
Mhm.
space? What about your spiritual space? What about your financial space? Because that's self-care too. If we're sitting up here trying to get the look of self-care and putting ourselves in all kinds of debt, we have that external look of self-care, but in our house by ourselves, we are stressed out.
Mhm.
Credit card bills come in, we are stressed out, right? So it's a holistic, multi-dimensional thing that goes into making self-care what it is, and that's why I said self-care is not a mani-pedi.
Yes, yes. So then it makes me curious, why do you think self care, the term self care, has been on the rise so much more as of recently. Like it's like every year we're seeing it rise more and more, and people are talking about it in different ways.
One of the reasons I think is that we are paying more attention to mental health,
Mm,
right? There's more attention being paid to mental health. Now, have we gotten good at getting the resources for it? That's a whole nother subject. All
for
right.
sure.
But
Yeah.
I think a lot more, I think people are more open
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
talking about their mental health. I remember, I'm older than you all. So I remember when the idea of taking a mental health day was kind of like a secret thing. I'm calling in sick. Uh, and I'm justifying it because I know it's a mental health day for me. But now
Yeah.
people will openly say, "Nope, I put in this day because I needed a mental health day."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how they decide to take care of themselves. So I think that's one piece. I think another piece is digital and social media, right?
Yeah.
And again, again, some of that is how self-care looks, right? So we see all this stuff on digital and social media about soft life and Lux life and this, but for some people that's what they equate self-care with. And I'm engaging in self-care, and so that's part of it. So I think with that, and you have more coaches coming on, I think we're hearing more and more about the self-care piece.
Yes, yes, I completely agree with that. And
Yeah.
so for you in particular, there's this idea about the short sprints piece. And so can you tell us what is the difference between short sprints of self-care versus long blocks of self-care?
Yeah. So I will equate this to um a race, you know, or running. Okay. If you run consistently in a marathon to get
Hmm.
to those 26.2 miles, you're gonna get there. You who are running consistently might get there in 3 hours. I may run and then stop and take a walk to catch my breath and then run some more. Eventually, I'm gonna get to the finish line too.
Yeah.
Right? Off those short sprints. Or even if you think about someone who just does regular exercise, because I'm going to go in the other direction. If you have periods where you're doing this exercise and you're being really good about being regular about it, and then suddenly you stop and you're not exercising at all. When it comes time to start again, maybe you started 6 months down the line, it's not that easy to pick it up. It will come back. They talk about muscle memory, but it's not that easy. It's like, whew, hell, I didn't think. Like, I was doing this so regularly. I didn't think 6 months was going to make a difference, right? But had you been going, maybe you're not working out as hard as you were, but you had been doing regular walks, just
Hmm.
going out every day and going for a walk, you
Hmm.
know, and stopping there and doing that 3-4 times a week. Yes, you may need some time to come back up, but not as long as if you did nothing at all for 6 months. Right? So those short sprints were helping keep you some sort of physically engaged,
Yeah.
and they become very important. So when we talk about stress and when we talk about self-care, if you don't have this big chunk of time, and how many of us do, if you don't have this big chunk of time, doesn't mean that you should ignore it. You can do short periods of time. You could do 5, 10, 15 minutes, short
Hmm.
sprints, 30 minutes of a short sprint of self-care for yourself. It may mean you don't get to go get something done by somebody else, but sometimes it's a matter of getting up and going outside and breathing some fresh air, recentering yourself, recharging yourself, and then coming back and sitting down to work.
Yes, yes. Thank you for breaking that down, Dr. Judy. You're making me think about I've been meeting with a financial therapist because you talked about this financial self-care, and me and her had this conversation of having a date with your books because I work for myself. And so I was like, I don't want to have no date with my books. I don't want to talk about taxes. And she was like, see, this is the problem. Like, this is exactly the problem. And so what she broke down for me was if we do it in short sprints, she didn't say short sprints, but as you're saying, I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense now. Now this sounds like something I want to do. But the way she said it was, if you do at the beginning of every month, you sit down, you look at your books, you see how much money you're taking in, what your goals are, whatever. that will help you to make more progress each month and down the line. If
That's
she would
right.
have said this was the short sprints, and if she would have broke it down like how you did, I would have been like, yay. But now that I'm hearing you, and then now she's in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, okay, now I kind of do need to do this for my
Yeah,
financial.
yeah, and it'll help you see where you are, how you need to adjust, how you can optimize. But if you wait and you don't do this for another 9 months, it becomes real like, oh my God, what so you didn't even see what was happening, right? So absolutely.
Yes. Can you tell us about what Dr. Judy does for your short sprints? What does it look like for you?
So at a certain time every day, I have an alarm set on my phone.
Okay.
And as long as I'm not driving, because we don't want to do it while we're driving, but as long as I'm not driving or in the midst of a meeting, a work meeting, when that alarm goes off, it tells me stop what I'm doing, recenter myself. That
Hmm.
may mean Dr. Drew's going to get up and stretch. That may mean I'm going to walk up the stairs and get even more sunlight. Like I said, go outside, breathe in some fresh air. If I have enough time, if I happen to have half an hour, I may go for a walk. Now I live in New Jersey, so it's been snowing,
Hmm.
but but I may go for a walk. So those are the things I do. Sometimes it's just sit down and be in my thoughts for a minute. Not just to be mindful. No judgment, right? Just be mindful of where I am at the present, how I feel, check in with myself. Am I feeling particularly stressed out? What may be the trigger, right? But even if I'm not feeling stressed out, I'm doing it. And what that does is that's what you call practicing it, right? You're practicing some form of self-care. It's a self-care is a tool. And you don't have to go running trying to find your tool if you're using your tool all the time. It's probably going to be right there beside you, right? And so when you really, really need it, because now you are stressed out, you already know it like the back of your hand. Your tool is right there on the table, right beside you, because you use it every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I feel like you kind of already hitting on this, but how did you come to this conclusion that these short sprints are just as effective as the long blocks of self care?
Yeah, so it's really well. One, um, I had to do it myself. I was guilty. I wasn't doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I wasn't doing it at all. I was deep into work. I have a husband, 2 children, and they were kind of getting pushed to the side for work, and I didn't realize that was happening. So, um, being diagnosed with cancer actually is what kind of sat me down, um, and made me have to reevaluate how I was doing things because what I didn't realize was how I knew I was stressed out. I didn't realize how stressed out I was, like burgeoning on the precipice of burnout, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I really had to sit down while I was recovering and really think about how did I get here? Right? And that's because I wasn't holding on to my boundaries, but I wasn't taking care of myself. I was taking care of everybody else. I was taking care of everything else, you know. But I wasn't taking care of myself at all. And so I had to evaluate that and start to do little things and incorporate little things like every day, just take a moment, just stop what you're doing. Because you know what? I have what they call dry eye syndrome. It's been very good because now I understand. And when I went to the doctor and they told me, because I thought, oh my God, my eyesight's going really bad now. They said, no, your eyes are just dry. And one of the things that they said is the cause of it is when we're on these computers,
Mm.
we actually blink less while we're looking at the computer than when we're not. And so our eyes are staying open longer. And so we're not moisturizing our eyes, right? And so, sometimes you need to take a break from the computer so that you can blink more, right? That kind of told me too, like, sometimes you need to take a break. We get lost. When we're working, we get lost. Sometimes we forget to eat. Sometimes we forget to exercise. Sometimes we forget to get up. And these days, they're telling you that a lot of more people are working from home. This is like the constant sitting is like what smoking was
Mm-hmm.
decades ago, right? So we forget to do those things because we're engrossed.
Mm-hmm.
Hence my alarm, right? So just that realization that you really out here trying to say you don't have 5, 10, 15 minutes to take for yourself, that kind of sounds crazy, don't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely.
And so give yourself those short sprints. Even when they say do 30 minutes 3 times a day, 3 times a week for exercise, if you don't feel you have 30, then do 10, 10, 10 in a day. 10, 10, 10. Break it up even smaller if you have to. Because if you're really saying you don't have that, then you really need to reevaluate why you don't. You know, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us are holding on to things that we don't need to hold, we don't actually need to do, but we're holding on and doing them. What
Yeah.
can you move out of the way to get in that me time?
Yeah. Yeah. Dr.
Yeah.
Judy, you need to do a TED talk. You're saying things that are already you should, because you're saying things that are easily digestible. And I think that you're talking about things that are going to be talked about 5 to 10 years from now. Like, you're using language that's easy to understand, and
Mm-hmm.
you're making pieces go together. You're like, if you do this and you do this, it'll be easier for you versus doing this. That would be much harder to do it in the end. That's why I'm like, this is so easy to understand. You're
A plus
talking
B
about self
three.
in a way that like makes a little bit more sense for me, because I feel like all the conversations I'm in is about these bubble baths, which I'm not really interested in. This makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, both of us as therapists, I know we talk about this all the time. And I think it's not that we've been talking about it incorrect. It's just other ways to talk about it. Like Myra is saying, the way you're saying it is more digestible. And I feel like it makes more sense. And I love the fact that you've actually have walked the path. So sometimes we talk about things when it's like we haven't done it, but it just maybe we came up because we're intellectual or because we read some books. But like, no, you're like, I've been through this. That's how I know that these short sprints work. So I absolutely love that piece.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to think about that, Myra. I really am.
Ooh,
Uh-huh.
yes.
Yeah, talk. And you kind of already go into this a little bit, but basically, in a world full of media and books and all the things telling us to do this and that, how would you suggest the person not knowing where to start with self care at all?
This is going to sound really kitschy to somebody, but it's the truth. Um, just start, pick something. It could even be something that you think is going to help because, but it doesn't really. And then I want you to evaluate how you feel after that something. Okay. So I'm going to go back to the whole manicure thing. If manicure is what you do, but you notice that you go to the manicure place and you staring at this clock like, when is this going to be over? That's probably not your thing. All right. Um, but just get started. Like one of the things I say is like anybody that hears us talking right now, get up, get your calendar out, put something on there. And it could be I'm gonna go for a walk 3 times a week. And no, I'm not gonna let anybody interrupt that.
Yeah.
Okay? That's my me time. That's my I get to be in my thoughts as I'm walking time. You know? That's my dream time. You know, I get to dream about where I want to be in a certain amount of time and start to come up with ideas of how to get there. Just make it your you time. But so that's one thing I would tell them to do. But the other thing I would tell them to do is um, really evaluate this. So here's the thing: stress is inevitable. I don't like to call stress normal because when people think of things as normal, they're less likely to do something about it because it's normal. It's normal we brush our teeth. That's cool. It's normal, it's normal we breathe. We're supposed to be doing that. But when we start saying stress is normal, we don't even pay attention to the fact that it is there anymore. And that's when it can build and build and build, and you're not managing it properly. So when you have long-term stress that's not being managed properly, that's when you head toward burnout, right? So I tell people stress is inevitable. We're all going to go through stress, and some stress get us going. We can kick and move, but when it's frequent and when it's constant, it becomes a problem. So I really want people to understand what their stress triggers are,
Yeah.
right? Because when they're more aware of it, when you're aware of how you're feeling, then you can start to address how you're feeling, and maybe the type of self care that you use may be different for each thing, right?
Yeah.
If you know you're one of those people that get really nervous before a presentation, then you know that prior to that presentation, there may be certain breathing techniques that you need to do. And you may need to start, you may need to, hopefully you were already implementing this, but you may need to start doing those positive self affirmations, right? On the regular, and start telling yourself exactly how this presentation is going to go to take your stress levels down. So what, how you use, one technique for one thing, it may be different than what you use it for another thing. So those are the things I would tell them to get started. But number one, just put something down. I don't care. Put it down. Because this is about you taking care of you. And even just the mind piece that I'm taking care of me, even if this is not optimal yet, is a place that elevates you. Have you ever had to go out with some girlfriends and you were tired? You were like, oh, I don't feel like getting dressed. Right? But deep down, once you get there, it's on, right?
Yeah.
And so you just get up and you go. And once you've been with your girlfriends and you come home, you feel recharged. You feel, as long as your girlfriends ain't toxic, you feel recharged. You feel rejuvenated. You feel, you
Right.
and you needed that. You needed that. So, yeah.
Yes. Thank you for, just talking a little bit more about that, because you're making me think about when I first had my daughter. I was like, you know what, to take care of myself as a mom, I'm going to do pottery. It's like your version of the manicure and pedicure. And I did pottery and I hated it. And then I was like, but you got to keep going because this is supposed to be your self care. And I went again and I was like, this is not fun. And the third time, I was like, girl, don't go back to this.
Yeah.
It's cute on Instagram. It's
this,
cute
this
on
this ain't your
TikTok.
thing. But I applaud you. You tried something new
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't just say, boom, it didn't work. You actually tried it more than once. Like I tell my 9-year-old, you try food twice before you say, yeah, that's not working out. You tried it more than once. You didn't just give up, but you eventually said, this ain't it. And that's good. You actually were very aware of how that it wasn't really doing anything for you. You actually disliked it. So I applaud you for trying something new, because I think that's a good thing too. When we don't know what to do, try
Yeah.
something new. See what
Yeah.
your friends are doing. Don't do it just because they're doing it, but try it. You
Hmm.
may like it, you may not like it.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. But then what I asked myself was, what exactly are you trying to get out of this? And the answer was, I just want to feel normal. I don't want to have my old life before baby, but I want to feel normal, because in that phase of my life, it was like I felt like an octopus almost, but like an octopus alien. Like, why am I here? What am I doing here? Type of thing. And I thought pottery would be my thing because people loved it so much. The answer was just having time by myself. So laying on the couch doing nothing. And that has become my thing. I like to lay on the couch and do nothing for at least 20 minutes. I don't want to be bothered or anything. I like to have my eyes closed. I'm not sleeping. I just want to be there and exist. That's
Mm.
all I need. That's my self care.
Now let me ask you something. How easy was that to say when you first started it?
Not easy at all.
Oh, because it feels selfish,
Right.
right? I'm here. I'm gonna say this right out. There's nothing wrong with being a bit selfish with your self care.
Mm.
You have to. If you're doing your self care on other people's terms, you ain't doing it right.
It's not self care.
It's not self care.
Yeah.
We done took the I all the way out of self care because you're doing it on other people's terms. If what you need is just to, I just want to veg out for 30 minutes. Nobody talk to me. Nobody this. I just need to veg out. What's wrong with that? Nothing. But a lot of people feel guilty about that because we spend so much time glorifying being active and
Mm.
being productive at all times. And there should be also a result that they can see. So that's why I say the thing about the nails. You went and spent an hour getting your nails done. We can see that. Oh, yeah, that's beautiful, right? No one can see anything from you sitting down 20 minutes with your eyes closed by yourself. It doesn't matter. You can see it, you can feel it,
Yeah.
and that's what matters.
Yes. Thank you for affirming me, because sometimes I lay there and I'm like, should I check my? Nope, I don't want to check my phone.
Yeah.
Should you? No, I don't want to do that. But should you do it? So thank you for affirming that. I needed
Now,
that.
Myra, you out here doing things. You you out here doing things. I see.
Okay.
Being a renegade.
So, Dr. Judy, as we wrap up, what takeaways do you have for our listeners?
What do I want to tell them? Stop the self-care martyrdom. I know something. If any of you travel on a plane, if anybody's ever traveled on a plane, they always say, "Well, you have to put your oxygen on first before you put it on your child." And I know they've tied that to putting it on your child. Let's, and it's true, but let's. Sometimes we have to stop at put your oxygen mask on first. Just put your oxygen mask on, right? Um, so stop the martyrdom. You don't have to justify why you're doing self care. Just do it. Do it on your terms. You don't have to do it on a whole bunch of other people's terms. And I just want people to stop the self care martyrdom. It, Other people will benefit. No worries. But first, take care of you. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the idea of the short sprints. I think that some people wait for, they have vacation time or, but I always say to people, what if you don't make it to vacation time?
Mm.
What if that doesn't happen? I work with organizations to help their employees, and a lot of people say, oh, I'm doing this so that when I retire what if you don't make it to retirement? Does that mean you should never take a break? Does that mean you should never take a vacation? So to that I say, what if, you know, the weekend? Do you have to wait till the weekend to have a break? Some people don't even get that. So take your little short sprints, do that, take the little short sprints that you have, and really you're not only um dealing with the stressors, you're actually staving off stress, right? You may find you're stressed less because you've had this in place the entire time. Yeah, it's inevitable that you're going to get stressed, but you may be able to reduce it, stave it off a little longer, or even cause it to be shorter. Like when they tell you to take zinc when you have a cold because it'll make the cold shorter, you may even actually be able to have it a little shortened because of it. And the last thing I would say is put yourself on the calendar immediately. A lot of us are used to, if we worked and the CEO said we're having this meeting, we we wouldn't dare say, yeah, no, I can't do that meeting because to the CEO. So be the CEO of your own health and be the CEO of your own wellness and your own self care. Put yourself on the calendar. And unless there's a fire, unless there's a humongous emergency, don't just be so quick to move it for every little thing somebody else wants to put in that place.
Wow. Okay. I hope you're teaching your kids this. I know you are, because I feel like these are things we have to ingrain in our
I'm
kids.
trying. I'm trying.
Wow. Be the CEO of your own wellness is like the best thing I've ever heard in my life. Like I literally wrote it down, and after this, I literally have a calendar, and I've been doing what you just said. Where I'm looking at the calendar, I'm making sure I'm putting myself down. So to hear you say that, I'm like, maybe I need to write this on the calendar also, because this is perfect alignment.
Yes, that is a word. Ooh.
Yeah. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, we thank you, Dr. Judy, for joining us today, and it has been such a pleasure. We encourage all our listeners to check out her book. We will be linking it in our show notes and all of those things, and we will have all of Dr. Judy's info. This was such a pleasure. Wow, this was amazing. This is great. So,
And if you don't mind me saying, thank you both so much for having this space for Black women, and having, some forward thought. But also, I want to let people know that I also have a book coming out in the spring, and it's geared toward women finding balance, and it's going to be called "Girl, Get Your Life Off the Fault Line." Y'all
Hmm.
live in California, y'all know what the fault line is. Right? So look out for that. And if anybody, I am available on LinkedIn and on Instagram as Judy Wright MD. So anybody can reach me that way.
yes, thank you again, Dr. Judy, and it was a pleasure having you.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.